Hey there, my name is Rob Loud. I'm the founder of Loud Pictures, and today we're going to kick off a new series. Doesn't really have a name yet. Getting the shot. I don't know. We'll call it that. Um, we are talking to one of the photographers we work with, Jeff Gentner. He was on tour in 2009 with KG Elephant, and it was kind of like right when KG Elephant was really getting hot and kicking off. So it was an interesting time and a fun time to be around the band, and so I wanted to hear some more about these pictures. So without further ado, check out this conversation with my buddy, Jeff Gentner, and I. We're talking about the KG Elephant pictures today, and what you're. How did tell me like how you got involved in this, and how you got involved in them, and how you ended up like on this tour with them.
So it all started with Bonnaroo. Would have been the first time they played one of the tent stages. If I had to guess, I'd say 2008, 2009-ish. And a college friend, just back in those days, I think he emailed me. And he was like, dude, you're from Paducah, and there's a band from Bowling Green that's playing Bonnaroo. I know you go to Bonnaroo, like you should go shoot them. So I was like, hell yeah. And man, this whole thing's gonna be my shitty memory, but I feel like it was definitely a morning show. Could have been a Sunday or Saturday morning, and it wasn't that many people there. I shot them, was working for Getty. It published, and it got published in Rolling Stone, which was their, fresh new band breaking article. So I've always thought that was kind of cool that, a band from Western Kentucky and Bowling Green, and a photographer from Paducah, Kentucky, also Western Kentucky, that we both coincided for that and had some national recognition there.
And then, so did you hit them up, or what was like the next connection?
The next connection was the next festival. So with Bonnaroo being in June, they were playing Lollapalooza, which is the first Saturday in August, or first weekend in August. And I just made a point to just try to go say hi. And that's how it happened. I was just like, oh, hey guys, I'm from Paducah. And they're like, oh yeah, we have family in Paducah. We know Paducah, and just our Western Kentucky's kind of a small world.
Yeah.
And made contacts there and said let's try to meet up again, and shot that show. And then I think the next time we all met up was in Lexington, Kentucky, and it was just like a bar. It was like a bar thing. This is like right around 2009, so they had just had the one album out, and the hit single, was making some serious radio play. And then I believe we arranged to just go on, a run in Texas and a few spots.
Yeah, I mean, I think like the biggest takeaway, like for me, and like knowing you as well as I do, and you knowing me, it's like you kind of took things into your own hand.
Yeah.
I think it goes to show you that. I mean, it's not always going to work out like that,
Yeah.
But if you don't even try, it's never going to happen. So like,
Yeah.
you took the initiative to shoot them, and then you made another initiative to meet them and make sure they're connecting, that it was you that got them in Rolling Stone, and
Yeah.
boom, a relationship is formed.
Yeah. Yeah. And I believe by Lexington, the article had already published, so we were all able to bond over that and be like, yo, and I think also for me, just anybody that's from my small part of the country, like we're immediately family,
Right,
so
yeah.
even though it wasn't my city, it was like a neighboring city, and we all kind of grew up drinking the same water. So
Yeah. So you go out and do some shows with them. Like, what is what's the energy like? I mean, is it is there like an electricity in the air that like they're building and they're growing, and like this thing is happening? Would you say?
yeah, I'd say so. I mean, some of the things that I remember from the Texas run were, I think they were opening up for like AFI, somebody like that, or 30
Yeah.
Seconds to Mars.
Okay.
I remember Jared Leto, right? Leto?
Leto.
Jared Leto, yeah. Being backstage, and
Okay.
hanging out, and maybe not necessarily like a tour manager, but somebody involved with them, like telling Nirvana stories and how he, Kurt Cobain running around. I'm just like, that's some really big rock history, right? Like this is early on, and we're all super young, still in our 20s, but this is like on the verge of super rock history. This is,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, some of the photos, they feel like a million years ago in a way, just because of what, like, they've turned into.
Yeah.
And it just, but there's also so much, it seems the same,
Yeah.
And so, you sent me a ton of photos, and I went through them all, and, naturally, most of them are of Matt. A lot of music photographers you talk to, like Cage is one of their favorite rock and roll bands to shoot, if not their favorite artist to shoot.
Yeah.
I think a lot has to do with they give photographers a lot of access for
Yeah.
shows, which is cool. But also like they're just incredible performers.
Yeah.
And they kind of like leave it all out. Like the last time I shot them, like Matt had so many layers of clothing on it. He just sort of like would strip down like song by song till eventually he's like almost naked on the stage.
Yeah.
He started with like a backpack on and like a mask and a hat, and so it's interesting to see like them just in like jeans and Vans compared to what they are now.
Yeah.
But all right, let's pull up some photos. All right, let's start with this one is awesome. It is definitely become like a Matt Schultz like moment, the standing in the crowd thing. And I'm guessing, well, I'm cheating because I could see that you shot it at f2.8 at a half a second exposure, and I imagine with the flash, which is how you're getting that sort of ghosting. Although I didn't notice this. Now I'm sort of seeing like almost like a double exposure. So was this like a rear curtain flash situation or something?
Yeah.
It's so different. I mean, there's a lot of photos of him doing this, but like, I mean, it's cool that it's in such a small venue that he was doing it back then, and then like what you did with the photo, it's like, I mean, he looks like an apparition almost,
Yeah.
What, I don't know, like what do you know where this is, or can you tell me anything about this photo, or something that you maybe remember from this moment?
I know that it's in that era, so 2009ish. If I had to guess, this is Lexington or maybe in Texas, somewhere. If you cheated and it says that I shot it at half a second, f2.8, I don't really even know how to do double exposures. I think I kind of remember how to do that on film, but I've never really been successful digitally, so it's definitely not that. It's just half a second, and he moved. And you know what it could have been? It could have been, and that might be it, but judging by the crowd is still, and you see the lights that are getting blurred. I just did a zoom, push-pull. Yeah. So I hit the shutter and then quickly zoom. So for kids that are listening, with my left hand, I grabbed my zoom and rolled it in or out. I'm honestly not sure which direction. And in that half a second, what that does is it freezed him at both locations.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Well, and I wonder too, like, so basically your flash is freezing the action in the foreground, and then there's probably not enough light hitting the back.
Yes.
So I mean, it's interesting, and it looks like there's at least like two other like little flashes going off, so that like could be sort of lighting him even more. Yeah, it's there's a lot of interesting things happening here, but I just love that it's different. It's so different from like sort of what's become like a pretty popular Matt photo.
And you're right. Yes, it did catch. It caught. Looks to be 2 or 3. Cell phones are going off, or hell, it could be handheld digital Canon Sure Shots back then.
Right. Yeah. I know, it's crazy. Okay, this one. Let's see.
And
this,
to add, just to add to Matt going into the crowd,
yeah.
having been a festival, pit photographer for so long, and then going out on the road with a band, it was incredibly refreshing because you and I both are the type of photographers that like to roam and like to move and like to use some of our old school athleticism in our advantage to go get the shot.
Right,
and I remember some of those shows where, I mean, he'd go as long as this mic cord would stretch, way
Right.
out into the crowd, and it was really challenging to be like, oh, now he's crawling under the stage. You know what? I'm going to crawl under the stage with him. Now he's sprinting up the aisle to the back of this theater. Like, I'm going to go with him, and that just makes it fun. It's like not everybody. Most people stick to the stage, and he doesn't, and that's his thing, and that's really fun for a photographer to get to chase somebody around like that.
Yeah. I've actually witnessed, their current tour photographer, Citizen Kane, like running around trying to keep up with him sometimes.
Yeah.
And, he's got like his cameras hanging off of him and he's just like running after Matt. And it's so funny. But like, because the photo you end up seeing is like, this really electric moment, and you kind of don't take into consideration like what the photographer is doing in that moment,
Yeah.
And so like, in my head, it's like we always look cool and like, we're like so calm and collect, but really like we're like out of breath and busting our ass and, like probably like drop something and like knocked into a security guard.
Oh,
but you know what? Doesn't matter if you get the
bumps
shot.
and bruises, broken flashes, things happen, but that's what we love about photojournalism, right? You get into that moment and your adrenaline goes and you're just like, invincible with a camera around your neck. As a matter of fact, I remember it was one of those shows, it being so dark out into the theater that it was like afterwards, the road manager said to me, he's like, I didn't even know where you guys were until the flash would go off. And then you'd be like 10 feet later, the flash would go off. It's like, oh, okay, we sort of know that they're safe right now, that they're out there. Because the flash, we could tell what was going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I mean, definitely you need to be in shape, I feel like, to...
Sometimes, yeah.
To especially to follow this guy around.
Oh, yeah.
All right, let's... this photo I think is from. It looks like it's from the same moment or same
I think so.
sort of general show. I think the shirt is the same, but yeah, I mean same kind of technique. As the previous. This one was even a little slower. The shutter. But let's talk. I want to ask about this one. All right, so my guess is you are. You stopped at a rest stop. It takes forever to get everyone together because everyone's like buying snacks and going to the bathroom. And then you're like, hey, like let's take some photos while we're standing here and like let's just go stand in this field and there's a gas station behind you. Am I even close?
I actually think we were already at the venue and we had some downtime. I remember a lot of the stops were pretty quick at like gas stations, etc. And me being new to the team, I didn't want to, feel like I was slowing down the circus. So at any sort of like rest stop. But by the time we got to the venue, that's like it's like, oh, okay, hurry up and wait. They make load in, at 4:00, and then doors aren't until 8. Shows at 11. So it was during that time period, I believe, that this was taken. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I remember I was with Raylan Baxter and we were at like a rest stop and he like sees me like looking around. He was like, "Looking for a shot, huh?" I'm like, "Yeah, I am."
Yeah, for
he's
sure.
like, "Yeah." He's like, "I can always tell when photographers are," and it's funny because especially like when I'm scouting at like a venue and if I don't have my cameras, I'll just be standing there like staring at a wall, and like security will be like, "Hey man, like you good?" I'm like, "Oh yeah. I'm a photographer. I'm scouting. I'm like looking for places. I'm looking at the light. From a distance, I'm just staring at a wall." So this is at the venue. Yeah, I mean to me, this is like I just really love this photo. I love like his pose.
Thanks.
It just like I think these like this is the kind of photo that like looking back, in even 10 years from now or 20 years from now, like looking back at this simple, quiet moment, while he maybe wasn't, the Matt Schultz we know now and probably will continue to know.
Yeah.
And so to me, it just sort of reminds me of, like an old Rolling Stone picture or something that, like a
Thanks.
band, like that, that they're not quite the Rolling Stones yet, but
Yeah.
I don't know. I just like love the vibe of this. And then so that will bring me to this photo, which only happens with access. And
Yeah.
I talk about access a lot. And while it's important to be like a really great photographer, without access, it kind of doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
And in some ways it's more important, or in a lot of ways, it's more important. So, this looks like you're in a hotel
Yeah.
after a show.
Most likely, yeah.
Yeah. It's just like a nice, playful moment of like a very intimate moment. Anything you remember from this?
I mean, we were all just kids, so myself included, this is 11 years ago, so we're just hanging out, just hanging out in the hotel rooms, but also in the back of my mind, knowing that this is history, like this is, in my opinion, going to go down as one of the greatest bands of not all time, but our generation. And it goes back to what you were saying. We've shot a lot of live shows, and I've very rarely have I seen anyone that comes with their energy. So that's the one thing that attracted to me, though. Not only was it the Western Kentucky thing, but it was like every single time they get on the stage, they play like it's their last.
Yeah.
And I think that's just incredibly important as a performer, or in anything that you do in the arts. Is like you're only as good as your last body of work or your last show. So maybe some of that stuff I could have said earlier, but in particular, just hanging out in the hotel room, it's just like, get these shots, get these shots when we're young, and we'll look back that, maybe the hotel room doesn't look like this, with the styrofoam coffee maker, and maybe it's a touch fancier these days,
Mm-hmm.
Just one of those. We'll look back and be like, those were the days,
Yeah.
Side vibe.
Yeah, and I don't know if this is because I'm so involved in this kind of thing, but it speaks to me in a lot of those ways that it's not a fancy hotel, and it's like it looks like simpler times, and it tells a story even though it's like the most simple thing. So a lot of the pictures I chose. It certainly wasn't on purpose, but are black and white. I was talking about this with someone recently. Why or what makes you go black and white as opposed to keeping some of these images in color?
And honestly, in hindsight, there were times that I was shooting the camera set to black and white, and this is the Nikon D3, and I think, of course, nowadays I would have probably shot everything in color and then had the ability to flip it to black and white.
Right.
But I would have to say that, I started in black and white photography. I started in high school art class shooting black and white film. Mostly at that point, Kodak T-Max, stuff like that. And we had a dark room, and you'd go shoot your roll, and you'd learn to process the roll, and then you'd learn to print. So in my heart, I will always be just most likely a film photographer, or an even more so a black and white photographer. Like, I can get really geeked out if someone wants to sit down and talk about all the Ilford products. HP5 was like, moving on to my college days, where I was a photo editor for a student newspaper, and we'd go shoot a football game, and at halftime you'd race back to the darkroom, you'd process your film, and then you'd scan it into the computer to have photos ready for the next day's paper. And if you shot color and it was a day game, and you could get to CVS or Walgreens. Everybody processed film back then. This is like 2002, 2003-ish. You'd flip that in an hour and then take it back to the the newsroom and scan it, etc. But to answer the black and white question, to me, there's just still nothing like true black and white photography. Looking at it under a loupe and on a light box, or when a real black and white print comes out and you can see the grain from the film, etc. Like that would be why. It's just probably why I set the camera to black and white only. I'm just like, oh, this is black and white. So and also, my love of rock photography of the 1960s and 70s. I was a huge Linda McCartney fan. I remember doing like a college presentation on her, and when you talk about access, I mean, she was, some pretty good access there of the who's who of that era. Just shooting black and white film. And that's also part of it.
Yeah, I think for a lot of people listening, it would blow their mind to hear that you shot this digitally in black and white. Just because, but I get it, and I've done it before myself, because I think it totally puts you in a different mindset.
It does, and that's a good point, Rob. Is that it I don't know how to describe it, but sometimes if you see the world in black and white, it's different. When you're shooting, you're like, I know I'm shooting black and white. I'm seeing things more, shapes, geometry, tones versus color. Colors, it's a whole different beast. You may be attracted to something bright and shiny and warm and fuzzy for color, but not so much with black and white.
Yeah. I think like if you think of like a flower, like if you shot it in black and white against color, you'd shoot it totally different.
You're looking at the veins of this flower and the different tones, etc., with black and white versus color. Obviously, what color is it?
Yeah, I'm finding with my work, even especially like these kind of candid things, that I lean heavily on black and white, and I think us being about the same age, I think that is mostly because of sort of the old school rock and roll photography. I think that's sort of where our head's at, as opposed to now I'm starting to see kids who are younger than us sort of shoot differently. And it's kind of interesting. They're being influenced by people a little bit older than us, as opposed to people who were shooting like in the 70s, 60s and 70s. So I love it. That's cool.
Keep shooting film, kids. We love this.
Yeah. Even again, even with shooting film compared to digitally, different mindset also. So it's there's a lot of ways you could take basically the same picture. Which is somewhat proven. When you have 50 people in a photo pit, there's only so much you can do, but it's interesting sometimes to see all the different things that people come up with.
As I so Cage was one of the first bands that I started a relationship with, quite honestly, outside of when we just go to festivals, you shoot the shows from the pit. Occasionally you'll see a band backstage or something and you'll say hi, but this was the first band that I was like, you know what, I want to get that type of access. I want to document them. They are important. Like I want to invest in this for whatever it's worth. And in hindsight, I wish I would have taken some film photography, but it was sort of that period, I was shooting the D3, and I was like, why would we ever go back to film? But it wasn't much long after that, honestly, like a few years after that, when I started, a relationship with Kingston Springs and Rayland and, some of those guys that I was like, all right, I started bringing out the Hasselblad, when I shot some, Kingston Springs album cover, it was like shot on the Hasselblad, in a cave of all places at, like a 30th of a second. And I'm grateful. I'm grateful that I went back to that, because it's they appreciated it, and And it's just something about the analog that, we're really excited about.
With the D3, the Nikon D3, I mean, that came out probably around 2008 or something like that.
Yeah, it was brand new.
It was that was an exciting camera. There was exciting things happening at that time for Nikon and Canon. Like the previous models were like good, but like really only with like really ideal light. So I think it was an exciting time for digital photography. So I think a lot of people completely abandoned film.
Yes.
And now after a few years, they're like, okay, I get it.
Yeah.
And then you kind of went back to film, which is like happened to me. I was a couple years after you, and you definitely were a big inspiration why I started shooting more film.
Thanks, bro.
But it's interesting how I just remember being like so fanatical about the D3 and being so hyped on digital. But I don't know. It's incredible. There's no doubt. But I just don't think there's anything like film. And you have way more experience with it. I mean, you're talking about turning around images for the school newspaper the same day. I can't relate to that at all. Actually, someone was telling me that the Coachella photo team was going to have like someone on, if it's not happening unfortunately, but they were going to have someone processing film on site. So like
nice.
They have like a pretty badass photo team, and a lot of them shoot film, and so they were I think that's public knowledge. I don't know. Who cares?
No, man, I had a dark room in one of my first apartments, and it was amazing. And I've talked to you about this before, that like I missed the science side of photography. I missed that we could go into this magical place and tangibly put our hands into something, and just the smell of Fixer. If I smell anything that smells like Fixer, I'm like, ooh, Fixer. Yeah, that was rad. And just we've maybe someday in retirement age I'll get a darkroom again and just be an old guy that makes prints of like trees and shit.
It's the worst ways to spend your time.
Yeah, for real.
Okay, let's look at some more photos. Let's see. Okay, this one I think is just fun. Wayne Newton. I mean, there's probably not a lot that goes into this story, but I just wanted to pull it up because I like it.
It looks like Wayne just played there, so that was 2007.
Oh, yeah, right.
Yeah, I mean, that would have been like a year or so. This is taken in December of 2009. So,
yeah. Okay, let's
Nokia
see.
theaters. Nokia even still a brand?
I'm not sure. Okay, this photo, is this... Okay, I'm going to try to guess again. This looks like it's like right before they're going to go on stage.
You are correct. You've probably seen that many, many times. That is Waiting in the Wings. The rest of the band may even be out there or making their way out there, and he's just having one more moment before he goes out. And again, it's just so inspiring to see a performer who cares that much, regardless of where you are at or what the scenario is. Like, this is where you go out and you do your best, and to see those butterflies and that nervousness and that focus is really inspiring, and I'm glad I was able to capture it.
Yeah, I think being able to experience this also sort of changes the way you approach a show a little bit. Like, you just feel so much more connected.
To see the behind the curtain, to see that's the theater. It's like what goes on behind the curtain versus when the curtain opens, what the audience sees. It's two different worlds, and it's really neat to see both.
Yeah, I have been thinking lately and have been asked this, and I never really knew like what my approach or style was, and I think the marriage of with musicians, especially the marriage of like this guy here and like that guy here, like where, like what do I want to do with that, like having the ability to capture those two things. For me, I think it's like, why not do both, like so like here, he's a rock star, but like he also is like with the people, part of the people. That's why I think I include the crowd in when I can in a lot of photos, and I think that's what draws me to that is being able to shoot with a wide angle lens and capturing these kinds of moments from close up, but also showing like the bigness and the coolness of everything. So I love like the juxtaposition of like, that and this, because this is like, it's this is telling a story, and it's like just a guy standing there.
Yeah.
But like you see the guitars, like you just kind of could tell what's happening. And I love that, like, and these are, whether it's a happy accident or you had the time to compose, but like just the fact that his like silhouette of his face is on the white, because like if you were like a foot to the left,
It'd been lost.
it would have been all black and probably would have been lost. Although he does have the light behind, so maybe it would have worked. But yeah, it's just a simple moment, and
I think
that's what I love.
It's what you said about wide angle photography. It started as a photo. It started as art photography, but then primarily photojournalism. With the Associated Press and Getty Images and even a daily newspaper. So you do shoot. Like one of the main lenses I had in the bag when I'd go out to cover an assignment was my 17 to 35. And you'd shoot that lens quite a bit because. If you get close and get into the action with something wide, you can really tell a story.
Yeah. I know it's a big thing with true street photographers, shooting with wide angle.
Yeah.
Like shooting anything with a telephoto, anyone could do, and like there's a certain amount of, in your face. Mentality with true street photographers, that if you're not doing that, you're not a street photographer, and and I get it, because you have to have the guts to get in there.
I remember a photo editor, I forget, saying early on, or maybe this is just a common quote in photojournalism, it's like, if you don't feel like your photos are good enough, you're not close enough.
Yeah, I know, it's funny, and I always say, I no matter what you know about photography, a person can look at this photo and know that you're probably about 5 feet away, and if you shot him, even if he was the same size in the frame with the telephoto, they would know that you were not sitting close to him.
As a matter of fact, because I'm cheating, and I looked over here at the specs, it was shot with my 14 millimeter.
Oh wow! Okay. So shit, you may be like 2 feet away.
Yeah. With the D3, that's full frame, so that's their version of the 14 is a true 14. It's not super fisheye. That's the one thing I liked about that lens is that it doesn't get weirdly fisheye. Yeah. Which I never was a huge fan of fisheye photography myself, but so the 14 sort of worked for that. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like every fisheye photo reminds me of like
the Beastie Boys.
Beastie Boys, yeah. Just like up in the camera.
Yeah, for sure.
Which is fun. I remember renting, or I think I had a Nikon loaner, and I was down in Costa Rica with my friend, and was shooting the wedding, sort of like a guest photographer and a photographer hybrid, and man, we overused the shit out of this wide angle. Like we were on like fishing trips.
Yeah.
Like there's like every photo, no matter whether like we were on like a day surfing trip or like the groomsman was like Beastie Boys style. It just it completely overdid it. It was more, it was kind of like in jest, but.
Well, I will say, in that we know who the Beastie Boys photographer was that shot all those. Is Glenn E. Friedman, who shot iconic album covers from LL Cool J to Run DMC to all the Dogtown and Z-Boys stuff from Southern California, skateboarding stuff. I mean, he, again, kids, if you're listening, Glenn E. Friedman from New York City, this iconic photographer that you should be studying and looking at.
Yeah.
Hi, Dad.
Hang on a second. Guest appearance here.
Oh, no. Here she is. Hi, Cora. Hi. What you doing?
Rob?
Hi, Rob.
How are you? Wow, you just boosted ratings dramatically.
Yeah. Now all we need is a puppy. Kids and puppies.
Yeah.
All right. Run along. Go watch Paw Patrol.
And that is your actual daughter.
Yes.
You didn't hire like a kid for the day to cuteness the
Cora G. She just turned 3.
7-7.
That's right. 7/7/17.
Right. Okay, so Man, I mean, Brad, I love Brad.
Yeah.
I think he's so entertaining to watch, and he's such a force, and
Yeah.
you know, with
So
his
this
band.
is their other brother in there. Oh, I'm sorry, I don't know his name, but that's him in there as well.
Is
Yeah.
that right here? Dan,
Is
yeah,
it?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, Dan. Yeah, I'm
Who I
sorry. Yeah.
met, who I've only met once, and it was in a car in Las Vegas a couple months ago. And like we were like, I forget how it happened. Actually, we started chatting, and then they needed a ride back into town because we were at this like event thing. We started talking. I'm like, wait a minute, I know who you are. And he's like, wait, I know who you are. That's
Yeah,
really it.
I think
Nice guy.
I think this was a Bowling Green show, and with it being November, it's like right before Thanksgiving, so I know the feeling of being back in your hometown, sort of Thanksgiving
yeah.
at Christmases type vibe, and they had a
Yep.
big show, and there was a lot of family members there, and if I had to guess, their younger brother maybe still have been in high school, but everybody got on stage. This might have been post-show, or you know what I think this is? This is right before like an encore.
Yeah,
So
that's what it seems like.
yes,
Because they look sweaty.
yes, that's what's going on, and Brad and Matt are sort of having a brotherly conversation about what to do, and there may be a touch of tension going on. I think I remember as to like, what are we gonna do? Okay, we got to do the encore. How are we gonna do it? I'm pretty sure they played a Rage Against the Machine cover, and I want to feel like somebody like Morning Teleportation or somebody came out, but it might not have been them, and I'm terrible about this. But it was another really rad band from the area that had opened that was kind of jumped in. But that's what's going on here, and I love that Brad has a Grimies T-shirt on from Nashville.
And
I
didn't your photo grace the cover of Live at Grimey's?
That's right. That's right. Which ironically, I think is from this show. I think. Yeah.
Yeah, Grimey's in Nashville.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I love shooting during this moment because it's like the kind of combination of adrenaline rush from the stage, them having to go back so they're still in business mode.
Yeah.
It's like it's always super high tension, and like it's not necessarily like contentious at all or anything, but
No.
it's just like everyone is like so amped up, and like it's like everyone's
Yeah.
screaming at each other, but like that's just how you're communicating in that moment because you're so fired up.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just that's what I kind of figured was happening here.
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel bad that there's not more photos of Brad, but
He's
I mean,
American.
there's some
Such a chill
live
dude.
photos that I'm gonna have, but for this exercise, kind of ended up going heavy on Matt.
Yeah.
Let's see, anything else I want to talk? Oh, I mean, this one I just want to include because Bowling Green, and you see the Bowling Green.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And,
Tidballs.
yeah.
Yeah, which I thought I saw something recently about Save Tidballs. I don't know if it's still going, yeah, but and that's the original. That's Lincoln on guitar, original guitar. He's jumping over there, and Dan on bass.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it looks. Is he standing on someone or something? I can't tell.
Looks like he's jumping. He may have come off of an amp.
Yeah,
Yeah.
quite athletic, that one. Okay, let's see. This one. I mean, any story behind this? So, would you pose them much, or like I know you said like once you had a little time at the venue and stuff, sometimes you would try to arrange something, but
This is before a show, like down in the basement of this venue, and I think I was like, let's just run around and do some shots, like just you and I, let's just run around and do some shots, and he's super good at just coming up with poses and ideas, and also I think he's such a smart guy and like an artistic guy. He's like, let's see what this photographer will capture. If all of a sudden I'm like, run and jump off this bar, is he gonna get it? You know, and for me, I'm like, yeah, you know, like I hope I do. You know, like let's get this. You know, like as you know. A lot of photographers, I think you either are good at telling people how to pose or you're not. And I would think that I fall in the category of not. So it's the more that someone in front of my lens does, it's always the better, you know. So in this situation, he's hanging off of water pipes and it's perfect.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that probably has to, you thinking that way probably has a lot to do with your background, which was, you know, pretty... you know, the hardcore photojournalism.
And even and that's what the newsroom. You're like, you don't even you know, most of the time you're not even supposed to speak to subjects. You know, like you're just there as a fly on the wall. The reporter will talk to them, and you are there just to capture the moments and don't get caught up in anything because you don't want to influence news and be unethical, but also just you know, you don't want to be ready to capture anything that happens. You know.
Yeah. So, you know, you had mentioned, and I mean, obviously, I know this. So you had worked for the AP and Getty Images, and I've been finding lately, especially with younger people, they have an interesting impression of Getty and Getty photographers.
Yeah.
And you know, I mean, I kind of now that because I used to shoot for Getty as well, and that's how we met. We first met at Bonnaroo, 2006, I think it was. Both shooting for Getty. And
Can we tell the story?
What's that?
Can we tell the story?
Am I going to tell the story or are you going to tell the story?
Are we going to tell the story how we met? Oh my God, it was so cute.
Go ahead.
Either this or that stage. There's nobody in the pit. And I know if you're at the which stage, it's the one to the right. So someone probably knows what that is. And I don't have no idea what the show was or whatever, and I'm just waiting there for the band to come on, and you come in and you're like, Nikon, huh? And I'm like, yeah. What's your name? I'm like, Jeff Gentner. He goes, you're Jeff Gentner? I go, yeah. I'm Rob Loud. We're both shooting for Getty. And I was like, cool. One thing led to another. I was like, oh, you played college soccer? Yeah. Oh, you like to smoke weed? Yeah. Brothers!
Yeah, it was pretty easy.
Yeah, it was really easy. Yeah, next thing you know, like we were hanging out and it was a good time. So.
Yeah, but yeah, like I mean, I know like for me, like there was a certain amount of pride that like I was shooting for Getty. Because you know, I mean, they were and they are, you know, the biggest agency. You know, they weren't credentialing or hiring like just any total schmuck off the street. And now it's funny because, you know, some photographers I feel like look down on it a little bit, which is like kind of crazy to me. I was telling someone recently, like trying to explain Fashion Week and you know, how we would cover all of these shows, and like there was certainly some competition happening between photographers, like rooting for each other, but like also like not just trying to get stock photos, you know, which is, you know, I think, you know, you become guilty of shooting for a wire agency like that because you kind of need like your safe, you know, publishable photos. So I feel like it just changed a little bit. And I think, you know, younger people have all of these outlets now, whether it's like, you know, primarily Instagram, that can, you know, be more risky and never had to sort of endure this sort of like stock photo thing. So when you started...
go ahead.
You got it. No, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just wondering, like, if, you know...
When I started...
Yeah, like when you started, well, yeah, like with Getty or even AP, like
I can touch on both.
Yeah, I mean, you were in like you were a photo documentarian. That was your goal, and that's what you were doing.
So, ironically, I think my start with Getty was Bonnaroo, and it would have been the year before. So if we met in 2006, it was Bonnaroo 2005, and I just for people that are listening, I mean, I had my portfolio together and I tracked down the photo editors at the time, the entertainment photo editors at the time, and through internet research figured out who the photo editor was, or maybe even called, that was covering Bonnaroo. And I just called or emailed, and I was like, I think it was an email, I was like, hey, no offense to the guy that shot the Bonnaroo Music Festival circa 2004, but here's my music portfolio as of right now. Here's my photojournalism portfolio as of right now. And this is going to be one of the biggest music festivals in the world. You obviously are publishing these photos in magazines all over the world. Let's see what I could do if you give me an opportunity. And the photo editor did. She's like, okay, that guy's not going this year, you are. And that was in 2005, and I covered it by myself. And then in 2006, and this plays into what you're talking about, like camaraderie or whatever, they sent you, Dove Shore, and Roger Kisby. And that was the four of us. And naturally, I think I saw Dove's name, so I did a little research and was like, holy cow, like this guy shot like the Red Hot Chili Peppers and like knows Snoop Dogg and stuff, like, you know, like wow, like I'm like in great company, you know. And looking back, that was almost 15 years ago. Look at where the photography careers, right? The photography careers have gone. And I'm proud to name drop that these are my friends, and like Dove Shore is based in Los Angeles, in my opinion, is one of the, you know, premier, you know, boutique fashion
portrait
lifestyle, you know, Victoria's Secret, that, you know, basically beautiful women in exotic places. Like he does it better than anyone. And Roger's, you know, routinely published all over the world and getting these really cool assignments.
Very interesting assignments. I wonder if how much of that is him chasing the assignments or him being assigned to it. Because he's carved out a very interesting niche of shooting very specific things, like, you know, a certain group of people at like a specific election, or like a lot of like convention, like kind of off-kilter like convention attendees and stuff. And it's like very tongue-in-cheek in a way. I love what he's doing.
His style is undeniable because Roger's stuck with the flash and uses the flash on almost everything in every situation. And that's a lesson in doing what you do and sticking to your niche and doing it well. And, you know, your career, I mean, look at you. You're going to go down as one of the greatest rock photographers of all time.
Yeah, okay. Well, I appreciate that, but let's not get crazy.
And in my career, I was a struggling actor.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, that's a whole other thing. I mean, you like to
podcast.
You like to really, you know, get your career rolling and then change. Like, I mean, the first one wasn't as big of a jump, moving more into the video world, but moving from the video world into the acting world, maybe, I guess it's not as crazy of a jump, moving from behind to in front of the camera.
It is starting all over.
Yeah, usually people start in front and go behind.
Yeah.
But, you know, but you're doing the thing, so.
And I'm having fun, yeah.
And you know what? And you probably never look better, or at least in the last, you know, 10 plus years. It's funny, like, to me, you look the exact same, but then sometimes you see photos from like 4 or 5 years ago. I'm like, damn, Jeff was, I mean, you never, ever, ever were like big, but I'm like, damn, he's it's just more of a testament to how good you look now.
Jeff was sick and bloated because he was unhappy, you know. So, but it's also like when you got to be on this.
Beers.
And love to crush beers, and now I'm 100% sober and working very hard to maintain what I have to be on this side of the camera. So
right.
It's all full circle, man. I was acting when I was a kid, way before photography, so I was a performer all down in there. And honestly, I'll say that having the access to photograph people from, you know, Obama to Kim Kardashian, why does she pop into my head?
Well, you're trying to cast a wide net.
Tom Brady, you name it. Interacting with these people, for me personally, it was like, man, I just want to see what I can do on that side of the camera. Just give it a whirl, you know. I don't know. Dennis Hopper was a really rad actor in the '60s, but he's also a really good photographer. So.
Oh yeah, I didn't know that.
Huh. Yeah, he was.
That's cool. Yeah, I mean, again, to come back to like kind of where we started was you like
AP.
Well, no. I mean, in this conversation, like you take destiny into your own hand instead of just
you know,
hoping things happen. So like you kind of, rediscovered this acting bug. So you're like, I'm going to do that.
Yes.
Instead of just sitting around and wondering if what would ever happen with it.
And I will say this, that, and I want to touch on the AP in case anybody cares to hear AP stuff, it was in 2016 that I was directing a comedy in Atlanta, and we had an actor bail. And that morning, the writer slash one of the leads in the show.
Alexa was reminding me to turn the refrigerator on because I killed it for the sound, even though my AC's going and someone's been like, sounds like power sand. Alexa, stop. Sounds like someone's been power sanding for the entire conversation. So good thing I have the refrigerator off.
Yeah.
Anyway,
okay.
Good. So the AP for people who
no, real quick, the serendipitous thing, the acting's like, I was in following your passions and taking things. So 2016, actor bails, and we woke up that morning. He's like, this is real indie stuff. He's like, the actor's not coming. We need to find an actor immediately. And I was like, well, we're not going to do that. He goes, well, you have to jump in and do this. So my DP shooting, and when the point is that I got so methody into the character that it seemed like an outer body experience, and it was very bittersweet. The sweetness was like, damn, I love this. The bitter part was, oh, cool, Jeff, you've been a freelance professional photographer since 2002, and I know my annoying personality was like, you're not gonna let this go, and I tried to deny it. I tried to deny it for 2 years, and then it was 2018. It's like, now you get to start all over again. So.
Yeah. I'm smiling more because I'm imagining that this is exactly where I got that dank ass weed.
Do it, yeah. Neighborman Mike, who is based on a real character, which is also like our friends in Nashville, lived across the street from Raylan. Yeah.
That's what I thought, and then I was like, am I just thinking of Neighbor Mike, or was that actually the name? Yeah.
He's nothing like the character, but
right.
there was a Neighborman Mike who was a character in his own right.
Oh yeah.
But anyway, and then the AP thing is, I don't know if people are still trying to be, AP photographers or not, but, it was a really rad job. I mean, I was basically with them for 10 years strong, and it was my main source of income, based in West Virginia, and from news to sports to entertainment and a lot of politics. But I was working at a daily newspaper and was only there. That was my only full-time job as a photographer for, including an internship, 18 months. And once I realized that you could do this on your own and not have to punch a clock, I was like, forget that. Yeah. And the AP was my first client leaving. It was like my security, and it was awesome. It was really, really rad. And I don't know where. I know that this was also circa 2004, so print was still a big deal, and I don't know if there's newspapers and magazines anymore, to support that. So I was right there at the peak of it, and then it died, and but.
I think something that people don't understand. My Getty experience was so different than your Wire. You were more sort of news, and just by the nature of, just me being in New York City, it was very entertainment and celebrity focused. That's sort of where, the most work was, for sure. But I don't think people really understand the access that working for an agency gives you. This is how I got into shooting concerts. One of my first concerts I was assigned to shoot was John Mayer at Bowery Ballroom, which was going back, but even for then, Bowery Ballroom was, a tenth of the size of a place that he could have played, if not even less. It was great access to be able to shoot, John Mayer, who was already popular in a really small venue, or finding myself in a green room with, there's 3 people in the green room. It's me, Jerry Seinfeld, and Alec Baldwin. And I'm just sitting there, they're talking and laughing and making jokes. I'm like, do I take a picture? This would be so silly if I didn't take a picture. Yeah. And I take one, and they both turn at me, and then they just both turn back at each other and started talking again. So I'm like, okay, cool. So you get put in these tremendous places. It's how you got to shoot Michael Jordan and Tom Brady and people like that. So I think people maybe, there could be a good balance of doing those kinds of jobs still, learning a ton, because you're shooting a lot of different things, so you're learning on the fly. But also you don't have to be in this bubble and this thing that people, especially with entertainment, of shooting, like say a red carpet, like you go shoot like a clean headshot and then you shoot like the full length,
Yeah.
like there's a lot of photographers like this Steve Lovekin, like they shoot red carpets like so different. Like they get the standard, but then they shoot these like beautiful portraits sometimes that looks like they're in a studio almost. And so
Yeah.
there's ways to take advantage of it is basically what I'm saying, even if that's not like your long-term goal. And it's just been something that I've heard recently more and more, like what people's impression of Getty is and the Gettys of the world. I'm like,
Yeah.
I get it, but I didn't really think people were so down on it. And I don't think they necessarily need to.
Yeah, I mean, I will. When you talk about training for people, is that I would encourage any young photographer that if even if there's listeners that are middle school or high school, go shoot for those. I'm sure your school has a paper, or at least they have sports or theater shows. Go shoot for that because they need those images, because that type of training is the best situation that you can put yourself into. Because you have to think on the fly. You have to produce images immediately in changing situations and lighting conditions, etc. And the pressure that you have for something like the Associated Press is you would go on a news assignment and you were competitively competing against Reuters and Getty, and there's a little healthy competition there, but there was also the pressure of, if you don't get the one or two images, you have failed. And and you have to get that image that potentially could be the cover of USA Today tomorrow. It's your job for that day to do that. And I thrived under that pressure, and I was always a much better photographer when I don't have to think. It's just like, here it is, react, get it. Versus in the studio situation or portrait situation, it's okay at it, but there's just something about that,
It's your athletic background, man. It's your competitiveness. Yeah.
I get, which then translates a little bit to performing as like, 1, 2, 3, action. So they don't say 1, 2, 3, but I didn't go to film school.
Yeah, it makes two of us.
Yeah.
All right, man. Well, we've been going for like an hour. I feel like Zoom cuts off. I thought Zoom cuts off in an hour, but it seems like it hasn't.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, great stuff. I mean, it's funny sort of interviewing someone but a lot of these things I didn't know, and we talk about these things a lot anyway. But sometimes it's good to like do this kind of thing. Like my friend was telling me he did this with his parents, and he like learned more about them than like in like an hour than like his entire life.
Nice.
But so this has been fun. Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me kick off your thing. I'm proud of you. I love you. You know that. Keep it up.
I love you. Okay, then we'll cut here and then whatever.
All right. You want to hit stop?
All right, well, that does it for my conversation with Jeff. I've known Jeff for 15 years or so, and I didn't know most of those stories, so I thought that was pretty cool. I think anytime you can get a little bit of context behind these photos, it just makes it that much more interesting. It's also for that reason I'm going to keep doing these. I think we're going to include more of our photographers that we work with, and go buy a print. We donate a certain portion, or a substantial portion, I think. Right now, our charity partner is Crew Nation, and Crew Nation gives money back to out-of-work music employees. And a lot of us are out of work. I was supposed to be on tour with the Killers for about 8 months this year, so that's kind of why I started this. Good way to stay connected with my community and give back a little bit as well. So you're probably either a photography fan or a music fan, so if you buy a photo, know that it's going to a good cause. So thanks for checking it out, and stay tuned for some more videos. Okay.
Six Flags, hell yeah.